The learning objectives of this presentation are to identify the main purposes of government and the major types of government, including constitutional democracy, to define politics and explain how representation enables citizens to influence political decisions, to describe 3 reasons why achieving effective governance and meaningful representation can be difficult even when people agree on these principles. Government is the institution through which a land and its people are ruled. Governance is a process of governing, which means to make a decision about national affairs and putting them into action. Governance, at least in the case of the United States, requires citizen representation, whereby citizens select someone to speak for them or express their views whenever decisions must be made. What are the goals of government, or why is it necessary? 3 such goals, which makes it possible for people to live together, are maintaining order, protecting property, and providing public goods. Effective governments fulfill these purposes through their laws and policies. Ineffective governments are those who do not fulfill these purposes, and they are called failed states. Let's talk about the provision of public goods. A public good is a good that first may be enjoyed by anyone if it is provided, and second, cannot be denied to anyone once it has been provided. This can also be called a collective good. Enjoying a public good without contributing to its cost is called free riding. Thus, a public good has a cost which is not shared by everyone, even though the benefits are shared by everyone. What are the forms of government, or who rules? In an autocracy, a single individual rules. In an oligarchy, a small group of people, usually landowners, military officers, or wealthy merchants, controls most of the governing decisions. In a representative democracy, citizens are permitted to play a significant part in government or rule, usually through selection of key public officials. Another way to delineate the forms of government is by determining the limits of that government. Some governments are limited by what they can control. These are called substantive limits. Others are limited by how they control. These are called procedural limits. In a constitutional democracy, specific limits are placed on the powers of government through the Constitution. The authoritarian form places no legal limits on government, although power may be checked by other social institutions. Totalitarian governments have no legal limits placed on the government's power, and the government seeks to eliminate other social institutions that might challenge it. Thus, there are no legitimate challenges. Politics is about conflict and struggle to answer the question of who gets what, when, and how. Through collaboration and cooperation, using power and influence, we seek to have input on our leadership, how the government will be organized, and what policies will be set. There are rules in politics, of course, that establish institutions. Representation, giving citizens a vote, and governance, making authoritative decisions, creates a combination of complexity. In a direct democracy, each individual votes, while in an indirect democracy, our representatives make decisions on our behalf. Having someone to act on your behalf, called an agent, may not always follow the will of their constituents. Representation sometimes impedes governance through a voting stance which becomes gridlocked through such confines as competing ideologies or political party loyalty. And finally, the will of the majority at times hampers the rights of the minority.